Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Busy Bakers, released in 1940. It's the 277th in the series, and it's directed by Cal Dalton and Ben Hardaway. There is a beautiful new HD restoration out there. At the time of this recording, it's not on physical media yet. Hopefully it'll make its way on some sort of a set at some point. In case you haven't seen this one, I can't show you the full thing here on YouTube as it is a copyright protected cartoon, but essentially you have a down on his luck baker and he does a good deed for a seemingly old man that shows up to his shop. It turns out the old man is an elf or a dwarf or whatever this thing is, and he gets his team of little bakers or elf bakers or whoever they are, and they surprise the baker by making all sorts of products, and yeah, we get all sorts of shenanigans involving those elves trying to make all the baked goods. So nothing too deep here, as usual for a Dalton-Hardaway short. First up you're going to see is a re-edit of the original commentary I did with my good friend Austin Kelly before I had to take that down, and then you hear some new thoughts from me. So without further ado, let's get into it. And joining me today is the Slap Happy Bakerman himself, Austin Kelly. Say hi.
Woo woo! We're gonna talk about this amazing cartoon today that's just as good as What's Opera Doc in its own special way.
So lots to talk about. I'll just first mention that this is a version of the story of the Elves and the Shoemaker, which, to be honest, Tex Avery did it better over at MGM, but that's my opinion. And this is the last Hardaway Dalton short, so there you go.
Overall, I feel like it's just there's nothing too special about it. Even the animation is just okay for the Hardaway Dalton unit that had really good animators like Rod Scribner and like Herm Cohen, who was pretty decent at times. But it's nothing really too special, and I think the Shoemaker and the Elves concept was used better. I know you said Tex Avery's version of it a decade later, the PG Cobbler, was the best one. But I have to argue that the better one was actually, I don't know if you've ever seen this, Frisch Freeling did one in 1946 called Holiday for Shoestrings, and it's really Chuck Jones himself said it was like one of his favorites, and I love it myself very much.
Now we're on to the best part of the cartoon, the baking part.
There are a few of these elves, the bakers, whatever you want to call them, that are actually caricatures of staff members at the view at the time. Henry Bender, Jerry Colonna, who we've talked about many times, who was a radio star in there. At the beginning also, with the shot of them in bed, there was a Groucho Baker, Harpo Baker, and a Chico Baker, which is kind of interesting as well.
I'll admit, out of all the gags in here, like I would never laugh, but the one thing I do laugh is that the pumpkin one where he's trying to make that pumpkin pie and he just hits the pumpkin. You think, oh yeah, it's just going to form into a beautiful pie, but it just splashes everywhere. So at least I got that part right.
Yeah, that gag kind of like defines the entire cartoon's like sense of humor. It's some stuff that you'll like smile at and you're like, okay, that's kind of good, but it's nothing that you're gonna laugh and cry, die, cry laughing at, because it's really nothing that special in the end.
But the ending to this cartoon doesn't feel right, whereas like, oh, there's a 5-cent pie charge or something, and then the pie is thrown in his face. And
to be honest with you, when I was watching this in prep for the commentary, I didn't get it. I think this is just a random old guy, and it's not the same old guy who was at the beginning, who was testing to see how kind he was. But I think it's just some random guy, and he's like, I don't even know how to explain it. But by the way, I want to get this out of the way. This last shot of the cartoon where he says the 5-cent deposit thing, this is a Cal Dalton scene. This is Cal Dalton animation, which is very weird seeing him animated on his own cartoon. But he also did animation on Porky the Giant Killer, which is kind of cool as well.
So those were the highlights of the original commentary. So here are just a few more details, and we'll definitely go through the short once again for a few things that I did miss or just any other observations. So this is the last of the Cal Dalton Ben Hardaway shorts. So they didn't really have a particularly long run. So they took over from Frisch Freeling, who had gone to MGM, and he directed Captain and the Kids there. He didn't particularly enjoy the experience, and so Frisch Freeling ended up returning to the studio. And since there wasn't no need for yet another directing unit. Cal Dalton and Ben Hardaway were both demoted. Cal Dalton became an animator again until 1947, and Ben Hardaway, he stayed for a little bit as a story man, but he ended up leaving not long after, and he worked at the Lance studio, where he would create Woody Woodpecker, who was similar to his wild prototype Bugs Bunny. So, a few changes here. So after this one, we're going to have Friz Freleng come back, and we're going to have some, quite frankly, better cartoons. I'm not particularly a big fan of the Dalton-Hardaway unit. They made one or two shorts that are pretty decent, I will admit, but otherwise, their run is more or less forgettable, but that's just me. And in Keith Scott's wonderful Cartoon Voices book, I had a look at just to see who did the voices in regards to the song that you hear, and it's a bit of a troupe, and you've even got familiar names like Phil Ravenscroft. But what's interesting is that the song was co-written by Pinto Colvig, who's perhaps most well known for doing the original voice of Goofy, and he also even did some of the singing in this one in a sped-up voice within the vocal group. So, indeed, it is an original song that was written for this cartoon. But let's take a look at this short for a few things that I did miss last time or any further observations. So, regardless of my feelings on this short, it's not good, but regardless of my feelings on it, I love the look of it. It looks amazing, especially in this restoration. It absolutely pops, and I really hope to see this one on disc. I do admit I chuckled a little bit with that sign, the "We can't complain about our business. There ain't none." It's like, why would you have that sign? I don't know, but whatever. I think it's pretty funny. I mean, how bad is this bakery? I mean, if the food was good, people would buy it, surely. And I'm assuming that this takes place in the Netherlands. I mean, the bakery is wearing clogs. I know that's a bit of a stereotype there, but I'm assuming it's there. And we even see a windmill later on, so I guess it's the Netherlands. So we see a really weird gag. And again, whenever Hardaway's involved, we get these gags that just amount to really nothing, or they're just kind of weird. But anyway, so he needs a gauge to tell him that his barrel is empty. Can't he just look inside? Whatever, who cares? And why does he even need to look in the till? He already knows it's broke. Again, whatever. Now, the gag might be a bit on the meh side, but I do like the painting of his hand that's holding all what the cheapskates pay him. I don't know why he allowed them to pay that, but whatever. We'll just go with it, of course. So now we see a blind man enter, or the supposed blind man in any case, asking for some crumbs of bread. The baker gives his last donut to the old man, although his accent sounds more Scandinavian than Dutch, but anyway, again, we'll just go with it, whatever, it is what it is, and all that stuff.
Spare a poor, hungry old man a few crumbs of bread? That's her donut, that's all I have, but you're welcome to it.
And the old man says, "You will be rewarded for your kindness." So we all know that something special is going to happen. So the old man ended up running, once he's out of sight from this baker, over to the windmill, and he ends up changing into a baker elf. I'm just going to call it baker elf. Yeah, I don't even know what these things are. Well, we'll just call them a baker elves, okay? Now, in this bed, we see an interesting combination of baker elves. So we got Jerry Colonna, who was a comedian at the time, very well known, and he's prominently in a lot of Looney Tunes shorts, even being a Jerry Colonna worm in a few shorts as well. We've got Harry Binder, who was a producer at the studio at the time, and even Harpo Marx, who was the silent harp-playing member of the Marx Brothers. So it's a really weird combination. I don't know why they picked them, but oh well, that's what they are in any case. And then we see all the baker elves dressing up as bakers. Honestly, this bit wasn't really needed. They could have just cut it out. Like, they could have just had the message set at the bed and then just cut to the next scene, but oh well, it's there. So the elves end up going to the bakery and see the baker is sleepy, and now they sing their song even though they still need to keep quiet as the baker is sleeping, but whatever.
"We must work fast before he wakes and fill his store with pies and cakes."
We're the slappy, happy, snappy little bakermen, and we're always in it every minute now and then.
So now it's all about the elves doing silly things to bake their stuff, which again, you'd think it would wake the baker up, but you just go with it, of course. But first up, we see the sanding down of the chocolate. All right, sure. Now, I'm not sure why this other baker elf cracks an egg but only puts a shell inside. I mean, isn't he supposed to help the baker? So I guess this one's not particularly bright, but anyway. Then we hear a baker elf singing off key, and boy, is that annoying. That singing, oh, that voice is terrible.
4 pies and tarts or gingerbread, or maybe jelly rolls instead.
But Yeah, and if you freeze frame some of him, he looks really evil too, so yeah. And they're now making dough as like they're farmers with a hoe. Yeah, why not? And they're still baking and they're singing to the song, which I'll admit, the song is quite charming. It's probably the best thing about this short. It's a silly little song and it's nice to listen to, but that's just about it.
Then you add a little flour and some chocolate goo, and some sugar and vanilla and some nutmeg too. Push 'em into the oven until the 10:15.
We're the snappy, happy, snappy little baker men.
And the Harper elf drops a cake, and of course, we get a nice little dad joke there. It's now an upside down cake. Chef's kiss to that, of course. Now, as mentioned in the track, I did like the pumpkin gag. Of course, Tex Avery did it better beforehand, the actual can bit, but hey, at least the pumpkin exploding is kind of okay. I mean, what did this elf expect? Who knows? Oh, look. I guess that's how donuts are made. You just fill them up like tires and then spray them with spray paint for the icing. Well, who says cartoons don't teach you anything, right? And now we're back to the cross-eyed elf, and we get to a bit where he can't put the dough in the tin due to it rolling on the rolling pin constantly. There's no real payoff though. The guy just falls and the pin hits him on the head and that's it. So you get that build up and it ends up being nothing, which is a shame because there could have been other things in that scene that could have made it funnier, but anyway. So now he hits the dough, which somehow hits him too and pokes him in the eye, and the two do battle? Alright, yeah, very weird. But once again, it's a Hardaway short, so what do you expect? Of course, there's going to be a lot of weird gags. Oh look, and I guess that's how they make those jelly roll things. They just make a massive one and cut it. Again, there's no payoff, it just gets rolled, and the baker elf just looks shocked. That's the problem with a lot of the gags in this one. There's some interesting ideas, but there's really just no payoff to a lot of it. And then you see the bananas get smashed into the pies. I mean, gee, I wonder what's going to happen. Will he get smashed in the face? Of course he does. What do you think happens? So after all of that, the baker wakes up and sees all the goodies. And thankfully, he did actually see how some of them were actually made. Otherwise, he might have just thrown it all in the bin, but anyway. And he doesn't even question how the stuff gets there, but again, we just go along with it, and that's fine in this case. And now, randomly in the middle of the night, as far as I could tell, there's no sense of time in any of that sequence. It's not like it's the next morning or anything, but hundreds of people are all of a sudden just lining up for the goods. Alright, I guess anything to drive the story forward, I suppose. And hey, the baker should be happy, because all of this would be pure profit in the end, because he didn't actually pay for any of the ingredients, which I'm assuming the elves brought in. But I wonder if anything's actually changed. I mean, after all, will the baker know how to run a business? Like, once all this stuff goes, is he going to end up being back to the way it was before? Yes, I know. I'm overthinking this. I know I am, but it's still was just weird to me. It just popped out to me anyway. So in rewatching this, I wanted to see if I could refigure out this ending because it didn't make sense before, and yeah, it still doesn't make sense. So the old man supposedly comes back asking for a crumb and he's given a pie. And then the baker says there is a 5-cent deposit on the pie pan, and of course the pie is thrown back to the baker who is stunned, and he says, "That's gratitude for you." That's my poor Scandinavian version, but anyway. But what is this ending? What did the baker learn after all this? One of the worst punchlines I've seen in the short. Oh dear. Yeah, so after revisiting this one, look, I will say this has a nice gem of an idea. Poor baker can't make ends meet, does a good deed, and his act of kindness, some beings help out and solve the baker's woes. But why does the baker all of a sudden become a bit of a prick at the end? I don't know, guys. This one is not particularly good. I mean, the only thing good about it is how the cartoon looks. It looks really nice, and the song is really good too, but yeah, I don't know. 5 out of 10. I will say good riddance to Hardaway Dalton. Hardaway I've never really particularly liked too much, but Cal Dalton's a good animator, so it's good that he sticks around and does some nice work after this. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.
Hey, mister, I forgot to tell you that there's a 5-cent deposit on the pie pan.
That's gratitude for you.